So let's get started. First, I want to thank JFF, the EdTech Center at World Education in Sappho for for sponsoring this project and making it a possibility. And I want to introduce my co-presenter. Mary, you want to unmute and go ahead?
Greetings from South Carolina. I hope everyone is ready to celebrate this great project. So good to see everybody.
Absolutely. And I'm Rachel Riggs. I am the digital learning specialist for the EdTech Center at World Education. And Jeff Gomez, our digital learning senior technical advisor and director of Crowded Learning for the EdTech Center at World Education, will be joining us momentarily. Ironically enough, Jeff is in another EdTech Maker Space doing a Wakelet training, but he's going to join us just in a few minutes here, and he will be celebrating with all of us. So today we really want to just very quickly address the why behind the Digital Skills Library. Why was this important to us? And then we will talk a lot about showcasing the amazing work that was done through the DRAW EdTech Maker Space, the Digital Resilience in the American Workforce EdTech Maker Space, how we analyzed the Digital Skills Library to find gaps and to fill those gaps. And it was a collaborative effort on behalf of so many excellent adult educators. And then, of course, what you've all come for is the reveal of the updated Digital Skills Library. We've added so many new activities. We've added activities in other languages, and it's beautiful on your desktop, and we're just so excited to explore with you. So during this EdTech Makerspace project, drum roll, indeed, Kate, we opened up this activity submission form that anyone could submit activities to, and our participants could as well. We got 60 activities submitted via this form. So this was not part of the actual project. We were doing the sessions and the workbooks and all of that. It was just opened up to anyone to submit more activities. I'm mentioning that because the updated Digital Skills Library has a link, and we encourage all of you to click on that link and submit your activities. This is collaborative. This is the contribution of everyone. So please, if you know of good activities, do submit them. We did a raffle for this project for a gift card, and I am happy to announce that the winner is Kate. Kate was one of our participants, and she submitted many activities using the form and in her workbook, and it was just incredible the amount of work that she did. So congratulations, Kate. We will get in touch with you to administer your gift certificate, of course. But we thank you more than anything just for all of your hard work. Kate added to the form. She added activities that she knew we were focusing on for this project. So she really took to heart where we found the gaps and where the digital resilience in the American workforce, those draw SMEs, where they felt that we really needed to add resources, and she added so many. So she added them in all different formats. She added games, she added teacher guides, and they were all correctly aligned to the skills. So it was just a really high quality effort on behalf of Kate, and we're so thankful. This is one, I wanted to share this example because it's really cool. It's a game. Let me grab the link for you guys. Oh, I didn't put the link in here. Okay, well, you know what? You're gonna have to just find it in the library because it's in the library now. But it was a cool game that showed different images and kind of asked these evaluative questions of, you know, is this image real? Is it really connected to this event? And as you're going along, it's showing you how to do reverse image searches to see if some of the images you see on social media and in the news are really connected with the events that they claim to be. So it's just a neat activity, one of many. Okay, so the why behind the Digital Skills Library, I won't spend too much time here because I think everybody who's here knows the why, and that's why you've joined us. But I do always want to be sure to emphasize why we did this and why we'll continue to maintain it. The why is the 32 million Americans who struggle to use a computer. The why is the almost half of adults that don't feel comfortable using technology to learn. And the why is that technology continues to advance, change, and transform. And so developing digital resiliency is so important so that we can help everyone develop the skills that they need and the resilience they need to keep up with all of those changes and transformations in technology. Yeah, agreed, Susan. That is such an important one. Sorry, I always like to check the chat and then I just stop talking. Okay, here I go. The other why of this is part of our crowded learning initiative, and the EdTech Maker Space process is meant to feed into this entire ecosystem of open educational resources. So the other why is just our belief that we can come together, educators can come together, participate together, collaborate together, contribute excellent resources, and work together to put them into these centralized places, create these products that people can really use to learn and to teach. And just like the Digital Skills Library, but in so many other initiatives and products that we've created through the crowded learning ecosystem, so that learning is accessible to everyone, and so that teachers can find what they need to support learners, so that learners can find what they need, so that employers can support worker learners, just so that everyone can participate in learning and in education. Oh, and yes, of course, I have to plug that the Digital Skills Library is coming soon to Skillbox at the end of the summer. So I have to plug that. Going back to spring of 2021 is when we first did the Digital Skills Library EdTech Maker Space. We had over 50 adult educators participate in that makerspace. It's not today's showcase. This is actually the second EdTech Maker Space. The first one is when we built the Digital Skills Library. So I have to give a big shout out to those educators as well who helped us to build the initial thing that we have updated now through this new project. So also a shout out, I see my colleagues putting in the chat, to the Mariam Assefa Fund that funded this work. And also a shout out to Octay, who has funded the second update of the EdTech Maker Space. Okay, without further ado, that's all the why, that's all the build up to this amazing project that we've been working on since January. And I'm going to hand it over to my amazing colleague, Dr. Mary Gaston, who has worked so hard on this project and has kept us all on track throughout the entire process. So take it away, Mary.
All right, I'm going to grab, if you can stop your share, I'll grab the screen.
Grab it.
Okay. All right, I have to get everything situated. Like Rachel, I like to try to follow along with you guys. I'll quit moving things around in just a minute. I thought I was ready. It's just been that kind of week. But this is the highlight of my week. I am so glad to be here with people that have just awed me over the last couple of months, giving of their time and being so committed in order to make lives better and communities stronger. So I get to tell the story of the EdTech Makerspace 2022. So the skills of focus for this ETMS, of course, came from the Seattle Digital Equity Initiative Digital Skills Framework. Now, in this project, we focused on 13. I jokingly call them my baker's dozen. And these are the skills that this EdTech Makerspace focused on. There's a data skill. Now, this one's actually in the creation domain, but it's about understanding and using data. Then you've got 2 creations about digital content. you've got 2 email skills, you've got 2 information skills, you've got the adapt to new technology, which is a lifelong learning skill. We had 4 privacy and security skills that we focused on, and 1 workplace skill, which was find a job online. So how did we come up with these 13? I jokingly said last time that we put all of the skills in a hat and we had Jeff draw them out, but that is not the way it happened. It took a little bit longer to do it the way we did it. But we took data from the landscape scan and we took data. Interviews have been done, questionnaires, and there was data from the first EdTech Maker Space. So we combed through that data. We read what people said were needs, were trends, were skills that they knew adult learners needed in order to become, yes, spreadsheets upon spreadsheets. And then we took that information and we aligned it to the digital skills framework, the Seattle framework. From that, we then looked at what we had as far as numbers of resources, and those 13 floated to the top. So that was the focus. The first session, there was an information session, but the first work session was all about finding the gaps. So if we take the existing digital skills library pre-project, if we took that and we looked at these 13 skills, where are the gaps? And that was the focus of that first session. So to get started, we had to define the skill. Each group had to take their skill and define it and break it into sub-skills. Then they had to look at the library and say, okay, do I have resources to cover all of the sub-skills, or are there some things missing that need coverage? So they were evaluating coverage during this session. Then they also had to evaluate learner fit. And we'll talk more about what that learner fit means in just a minute. So each group was, their first task was to use, they had a collaborative workbook, and they took the skill. They had guiding questions. They had materials posted. They had great discussions about what their skill was all about. And in their workbook, they broke that skill down into the essential sub-skills. And this is the guiding question. When we're looking for coverage, when I go to the library, do I find the content that I need to teach or learn the most important aspects of this skill? And so they were looking at what was already in the library and saying, was there enough to completely cover the skill? And so when they did that, they used their notebook again, the coverage section of the notebook, and as a group, they came to decisions about what was needed. They were identifying those gaps that would help direct the treasure hunting that was to come. We're going to talk about, well, Kate's going to talk about learner fit over the next couple of slides, but the guiding question for learner fit was similar to the coverage. It's like when I think about my learners and I go to that existing library, am I going to find activities that fit my learners? And Kate, I'm going to ask you to unmute and cover these next 2 slides for us.
All right, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank the other members of the group, Mary and Laura. We really work together as a team as well as working independently. So thanks to you both. Learners, we know that one size does not fit all. And so you can't really define a learner with one adjective. So we looked at these considerations. Particularly important is the variety of activities, because different things work for different people. And one of the considerations that wasn't there, but I think that we should be aware of, is the internet connectivity. Because if somebody does not have a good internet connection, then they need something that they can download and work on offline, rather than requiring them to be online. And devices, again, depending on what you're used to using. I live on my smartphone, but when I'm doing real work, I'm doing that on my laptop. And you all know that different devices give you different kinds of displays and different functionalities. And so it really is important, as you're using these tools, to reality test how it works on an iPad or on a tablet or on a smartphone, as well as remembering that not everybody is connected 24/7 to the internet. I certainly don't need to say anything about languages, because we all have students whose English is on a wide scale. Anything else, Mary, that you can think of that we should stress about the learner?
No, I think that's great. These were examples that we gave, but we strongly encourage groups to identify other considerations as well. And Kate's group did that, as she was just mentioning too, about having some offline resources. I'm going to go ahead and go to that next slide. And here is where Kate is going to summarize some of the findings. These are some of the learner fit gaps that they identified. And then you take it from here, Kate.
Okay, just to reiterate, IS3 was focusing on the evaluation of information, specifically its credibility, and learning how to compare different resources. One of the things that, now this doesn't quite fit into learner fit, but I'm going to put it here because I'm not sure, Mary, if you got this later on in your presentation. But one of the things that we looked at was that we all had to look at, had to do with the licensing. And I want to just remind everybody that you should go to the CC licenses and make sure that you know what they represent, because in some cases you are limited. We don't really care about the non-commercial use, the NC, but ND non-adaptive means that you can't mush around with it and remix it or change it. So I'm just going to pop that URL into the chat.
Okay,
So,
Kate.
yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. So these were the a lot of the things that your group identified in your, we're going to talk in a minute about a gap map. So in their group, they were looking at learner fit and they were looking at the existing resources. And you can see the list here of what it is that they said they needed more of. Okay, thank you, Kate, for sharing. That's great.
You're welcome.
So once they did that, they went back to their workbook and they filled in what is it that's missing when it comes to having resources that fit our learners. And they worked on their gap map. And I'll show you what that gap map looks like. And we can drop the link. All right. So you see there's a link to a set of questions and a place to summarize the information from their collaborative workbook. So they had to come to consensus in their workbook. Then they had to find their skill. So I'm going to click on Kate's skill right here, or her group skill. It wasn't her skill. It was IS3, evaluate online information. So here they identified the learner fit. They had to complete the statement, what worked really well, what worked okay, what do we need more of, and they identified additional gaps. Now, why did we do this? This was intended to help the treasure hunters, the resource collectors, prioritize, to really target in on what was missing in the current library. So some of the coverage gaps that were identified, and this goes back to, was the whole skill covered? And these were the things we pulled out of the gap maps. You can see for each of the skills, some of those things that their group said were missing when it comes to addressing the subskills. And so the ones who were going to collect the treasures had had a compass, so to speak, to direct them what was going to be most needed. Now, this is just for coverage. The learner fit gaps overall, the slide you saw earlier was the IS3 group's learner fit gaps. And here overall, the ones that we saw over and over again. Okay, so that was session one, and everything didn't get finished in session one, just so you know. These committed participants were working in between session one and session two to complete those workbooks and to get the gap map document completed so we would be ready here. So session two was all about filling gaps. That was the priority. And these are all the things that had to be considered so that we could tag these things correctly to get them into the library. So you can see licensing comes in here, writing a plain language overview about each resource, making sure it is aligned to the skill. And we did some practice with the alignment. We wanted things that were tightly aligned. So this is what the treasure hunter workbook looked like. So as the groups were looking within, we provided some targeted collections where we thought they could find some, start off the hunt with, a smaller area to search in, and then we branched out in the session three. But this is what the workbook looked like, where they had to do the tagging of all of the treasures that they found. And I wanted to do a big shout out to our digital literacy leaders. Now, these folks earned the badge because of the number of resources they contributed within the workbooks. So I'm going to congratulate those. So that was session two, was the actual working in the workbook, collecting, practicing all that tagging. And then people continued to work in between session two and session three. And even after session three, we were still accepting contributions. So then we get to session three. And there we did a station approach. So people could choose how they wanted to spend their time in session three. One group looked at some new places to look for treasures or resources. One group just stayed in breakout rooms with their group and continued to work in their workbooks. And another group broke off to look at finding multi-language activities and resources. And so I am going to ask Jose if he will unmute and talk to us about his work on the language gap.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Let me start it there.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to working with everyone here. This was an amazing experience and really fulfilling one as well. So here we're talking about the language gaps. And before even going through the points, the language library gives us the ability to meet the students where they are beyond the language barrier. And that's what's like the focus of getting these resources there. And with that, it'll give us to our first point, the ability to target digital skills while students are learning English. This was very, with the amount of skills and resources that we were going through, you can rest assured that the skills are aligned to, in that language. So if you're looking for, how to create an email, there's a whole lesson of how to create an email, in Spanish, which was where I was focused on. And you don't have to worry about making sure that it's really covering that skill because, everyone that was participating in those areas, we're making sure that that alignment was there throughout them. The second point, less time on translating and more time on learning the skill. Again, it resonates again with that point of having that skill ready. You will search for it, you'll find it in that language that you're looking for, and you can share that out with the student. And then the last point is it widens the window of opportunity. And a lot of the times in the agency throughout the years, you work with people and students. And when you're trying to refer students to certain resources, you always have to make sure that you reach a specific person. It had to be a specific time, but sometimes the students don't know who to ask or who to reach out. This gives the opportunity for everyone across the agency that's using the toolkit to be able to answer those questions and to guide students to those resources that they need and, therefore help them get closer to their goal. Yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
Thank you, Jose. And I wanted to point out the reason it says privacy and security down here. I was just giving y'all each of our participants who are speaking today, I wanted you to know which group that they worked in. And that's where he started. But in this session 3, he did move to work on the language gap, and we are so appreciative. And thank you for being willing to share. All right, we're going to use the chat and just do some wild guesses here, okay? And you can do things like greater than or less than, if or just pick a number, but we're going to ask you to put your thinking cap on. And our first question, if you want to put it in the chat, which group of skills do you think yielded the most new resources? Okay, and I put the groups over here on the right. Which one do you think yielded the most new resources? All right, we've got a lot of participation going here and a lot of great guesses. It does happen to be the information skills. A lot of the targeted collections that we used to search in the beginning did have a lot of resources about evaluating online information. Some of the other skills didn't have near the number of resources, not to make light of the work that was done in that group, but it's a hot topic and there were a lot of resources there and they tagged them. And it is so important in today's. All right, I got another question for you. Which group of skills do you think yielded the fewest new resources? Lots of different guesses here too. And it was adapt to new technology. And that is a tough one. It's a tough one to teach. You know, it's really what resiliency is all about, is learning how to take what we know and apply it in a new situation. And that is, it's hard to teach in a tutorial online, but we now know that it is a need. Data was awfully very close. You could find coverage of some of the sub skills, but it was harder to find about using that data to solve a problem. And yes, Kate said there's new tech every day. Yes, and what's new to one of us may not be new to another person, which is really hard too when you want to grab some of those tutorials that are about new technology. It's not going to be new for long, just the nature of the beast. Yes, strategies, yes. Yeah, teaching critical thinking's similar, yes. Now here's one more question. How many activities do you think are now in the digital skills library? And this is, you know, we started with a library of resources and now we have added resources. So how many activities do you think are in the digital skills library now? And it'll change daily. Oh, I think we've got some great news for you guys. Yeah, it'll change tonight, yes. 1,694 activities now live in the digital skills library. Yeah, all of you should be so proud. Now, when folks collected these new resources and they built their treasure collections, which we talked about was a workbook that they added these to. After that, we needed to evaluate resources. Now, the ones that, there's a group that worked on this over the last week. You guys, in 1 week, they looked at 235 new resources. These were not the multi-language ones. These were just the ones in English. They looked at it in less than a week and they checked alignment. They made sure, you know, that it aligned tightly to that skill. They made sure this information was correct. The URL had to work. What was the title? What was the format of the activity? Was it an article, a video, a project, a game, the attribution? And they needed to check the overview to make sure it was plain English, easy to understand, told what that resource was going to be about. So we want to really hand it to these 7 folks who in less than a week did the evaluation of all of these resources so that we could get them into the library. And because of their work on that, they earn a badge called Digital Literacy Experts. These were folks who expressed an interest and then demonstrated, you know, that they really got the tagging process and the alignment. So congratulations again. Yay. So badges earned, there were 3 different ones offered and the criteria are here, but we had 27 people earn the achievement badge. And that was the work that was done in session 1. Then we had 13 people earn the leader badge, which was about collecting new resources. and we had 7 people do the evaluation on their own time, asynchronously, and helped us get through that long list. So again, congratulations to all of you for the work that you did. All right, we're going to do another spotlight on a participant's experience, and this is David Blaze. So David, I'm going to ask you to unmute and tell us about your experience.
Good afternoon from Southern Indiana. I actually am probably one of the least experienced people in this group because I was hired into my position 3 days after session 1 occurred. So I completely missed session 1, but my employer, who thought that this entire project would relate to my job, she subbed into session 1, and my group that I was assigned to caught me up really quickly, and I'm glad they did because this has been a great experience. I am new to adult education. I've got a background in some secondary education, but this is my first job that ever involved actually teaching adults. And so my exploring skill that they assigned me to is the designing digital content, which works great because I am teaching digital skills to adults. And I needed those tools to be able to create presentations for this type of thing. GCF is going to become one of my favorite resources because it's able to simplify some of my sometimes very too technical explanations for things. Treasure hunting is a dangerous job for me because as you turn over rocks trying to find different resources, underneath a rock could be a rabbit hole that I will fall down into and not come back out of for another half hour. I found a wealth of design tools for fonts, templates, graphics, things that I've only just now begun using because I've got so many bookmarks for them. I haven't even been able to get into many of them. But I think my favorite part of this entire experience was probably the evaluating, because even though we each probably had the resources where we had them all, and these are our special babies, and every one of them we would defend to the death. As evaluators, we were given somebody else's workbook completely to look at. And sometimes the most satisfying thing was to find a resource that didn't quite fit, but you loved it so much. And so you had to search through all the other skills in that ladder to go, oh, I found a family to adopt this little resource. And on the other hand, one of the most disappointing things is when you find a resource that is just so great and I was unable to find a home for it. And that little orphaned resource is wandering around out there. Hopefully it'll find a home someday. But I've loved this experience. I've learned so much out of this, and it probably accelerated me into this position already as it is. So thanks for the experience.
And thank you, David. I love the humor. I love the part about the treasure hunting. I don't know if you could see the chat when you were talking, but a lot of other people on this in this meeting have that same experience, you know, and one rabbit hole often leads through a tunnel to another rabbit hole. And before you know it, you use up a lot of time. And I'm glad that you looked at that evaluating resources activity as in a way that allowed you to try to find homes. That was a great way to explain that, to try to find homes for some of those misplaced resources. So thank you very much. And thank you for being willing to share. All right, Laura Stockton is, she came from the IS3 group, Evaluate Online Information, and she's going to share with us about her experience.
All right, can everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. I am a digital inclusion instructor, so similar to David's experience, this is fairly new to me because I've only been in the role for a couple of months. And so I purposely went out of my way to find a skill that we weren't teaching here that I think is so important, which was the information skills, 3 evaluating resources. And like David, I spent so much time in rabbit holes. It was so much fun. I have about probably 400 new resources in my computer just for my classes that I teach. When they asked for volunteers to be the leader in the group, I purposely chose that because that's not something that I normally do. And if I ever want to, you know, expand myself beyond just teaching digital skills, then that's something I needed to learn a little more about. So I picked to be the leader on that, and hopefully I did a good job. Beyond that, we just found so many resources. I mean, Kate was in my group and she obviously, cleared a lot of rabbit holes from herself, but the rest of us found some great additions to the category as well. When it came to evaluating the resources, I loved that so much too, because you get to see how somebody else is looking at a skill. Mary sent me their gap map and I looked at their workbook to see what they had done in their skill, which was creating content. And then I was able to better figure out whether these actually aligned to that, because maybe I defined that differently than they would have. So they had some amazing resources that I stole some of those too. But it was, I think the best thing about this for me was just getting to network and meet people here that all are as passionate about this as I am. So I'm so grateful for everybody I met here. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura, for being willing to share. And I love that. Yeah. When we want to grow, we sometimes just need to get out of that comfort zone, and it's hard to do. All right. We have a couple minutes to do this. So I'm going to ask each person who shared their favorite just to give us a couple of sentences about your favorite, why it was your favorite. But we've got Kate, David, Jose, and Laura, and I will be dropping the links into the chat for these if you want to take a look. We're not going to actually navigate to them, but Kate, you're up first if you want to tell them about Checkology. And I don't know, Rachel, if you're available to drop those links, that would be helpful. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Mary. What I love about Checkology is A, it is free. B, you can use it as a teacher. You can use it with your classes, or if people want to learn independently, they can use it. So it provides all of these, a wide variety of options. And as we've already mentioned, news literacy is probably a critical skill that we all need to improve in ourselves, and that we should be teaching in conjunction with any other agenda or any other syllabus that we're using. So I've been pushing Checkology in our meetings, and I was glad to see it added to the list of resources. It comes from the News Literacy Project. They have a bunch of other resources which I tried to add, and yeah, go to it. You'll love it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Kate. David, you want to tell us about your favorite?
I can't take credit for discovering this one myself. Jeff actually introduced it to us during session 3, but once I dug into it, I lost half a day. Crash Course has a bunch of topics way outside even the digital level. We're talking biology, chemistry, entrepreneurship, history of science. Yes, I did just pull it up here because I couldn't remember all that. But they break everything down into such simple terms that it's a bit cartoony at first, and you're thinking, am I looking at something just for kids? But absolutely not. They dig into levels of information that you never think about before, and they explain it so well and in such detail that it's a great resource to carry with.
Okay, thank you, David. Jose, you want to tell us a little bit about Social Media Test Drive?
Yes. So this was, I found this just like David was talking about going through the rabbit hole. And once I landed into this, I really enjoyed it because, as the name implies, it's a simulation of the task that they're covering. They cover a lot of everything: social media, ads, privacy. They give you like this news, like a news feed, and you kind of go over and just get an idea what you're looking for, but they also give you practice, like what can you identify that's not quite there. But I think the highlight on this one is that is as privacy and security, we were talking about the terms and conditions when you sign up to app, and those super extensive documents you have to read that everyone reads. And they go over a couple of bullet points of what each means, what you're kind of looking for those. And I think like having that context, that hands-on is very important, especially for these. I suggest to take a look. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Laura is going to tell us about her favorite.
Okay, so civics is who do the Control F. They have an informed citizenship lesson where the class is divided in half. They don't know that, and they're each given a social media feed to read through. And then the topic is discussed. It's some kind of political issue on a local level. And the class has to figure out that they're all getting a biased feed based upon algorithms and put that together. It's really amazing because it doesn't just beat you over the head with it. You have to solve it all on your own.
Okay, and these were just 4 people's favorites. Everybody, I'm sure, had at least one and probably more than one. Sometimes it's harder to narrow it down, but be sure and check some of those out. All right, so now it's time to look ahead, and we haven't had quite enough time because we were collecting the resources and then evaluating the resources and getting them into the library. So I'm sure there's more time ahead when we can reflect, but some of the initial things, yes, we identified gaps. Yes, we filled gaps. So where do we go from here? Were we able to get everything done that we wanted to do? We know we need new resources for lifelong learning to adapt to new technology. Now, whether those ideal ones exist or not, or whether maybe they need to be created, but we need some more resources for this. We need more for understanding and using data. Some pieces of that were well covered, but others, using that data to make good decisions, need to find some more for that too. Resources that support language learning and activities in other languages. That is a need, continued need, and a continued attention to engagement, to devices, and to resources that fit our learners. And again, I just want to say, I am in awe of the work that was done by this group. And just want to say thank you to everyone. It has been truly a wonderful experience. And I'm going to hand it over to Jeff.
I guess I should unmute myself. Hi, everyone. I hope you've had a fun hour. And I don't even know, what did we promise in terms of time and when we're letting people go or stick around and explore, like what's the expectation, just so I know?
We made no promises to anyone that they could ever leave this meeting.
You signed up for the Zoom. You got
no, our plan is to wrap up our presentation part, and we'll have a 30-minute breakout for people to be in groups exploring the library. So we hope people will stick around to explore, but there's definitely no pressure.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So okay, good. That just knowing that. So I'll go into the skinny of things. The one thing I'm going to say before we start off is digitalskillslibrary.org, if someone can type that into the chat. But we are live. We actually have a library with all of the things that you have done. And we have some folks that participated in the spring and went through the first digital skills library thing, and there has not been a library. There have been things that we pulled together and we tucked into one of our apps. but we haven't had the full-fledged library. So I'm really excited to share this. So the reason I asked for someone to chat digitalskillslibrary.org is we have to do a little hooking up on the back end. So right now we're using this really cool website builder called Pori. So I'm developing a ton of digital skills as we've been wrapping these things and pulling them together. So this is a website builder that you can connect an Airtable with. So all of these little makers, and including Rachel, Mary, and I have been working in spreadsheets for almost a year now. And we've finally pulled everything into this database called Airtable. And that is now pushing out into this website. So these are like, this is a living, breathing thing that we can continue to add to over time and refine and fix dead links and add more resources based on your suggestions. So super excited. And you'll see right at the top that there's this submit a resource. So for those who participated in the project and those who did not, you have the ability to continue sharing resources. Mary just gave you a call to action on the things where there's still gaps. So you always have the ability to submit a resource. We will see that. And then, you know, after evaluating it and tagging them appropriately, we can add it. So what we have here is just the starting point. We have a lot of things that we are going to be adding, some supporting resources for teachers, maybe links to other things that don't necessarily fit in the library because they're not direct to student activities, but they're certainly helpful for developing digital skills and digital literacy. There's just a note here saying this is kind of a work in progress and what it is, and then a link for you to sign up for our newsletter, because we will be probably even before the next Draw Makerspace, which is January of next year, we'll probably be doing activities around, hey, let's do a little crowdsourcing activity around lifelong learning, like come and join us. And all of those things will continue to be added. As you probably learned about in the next last hour, the folks focused on 13 core skills that were identified by our Draw Landscape Scan, but all of the resources in the library are organized by these 10 domains, which come from the Seattle Digital Equity Initiative framework. Now that link is here for you to see what all those skills are. And actually within it, there's green highlights for the ones that are the 13 that were the focus of this past 3 months. So there's 2 ways to explore the library right now. You can go by domain and you can dive in to see which resources there are within that domain, or you can just do an open search down here. And I thought this was updated, but not. Obviously, the most predominant resource, and many of you are very familiar with it to begin with, was GCF Learn Free. But there's a number of other resources that are in here. So some of the featured resources that we focused on for this project, I can do a search by source. And so those are all listed here. And then some of the one-offs, like great video by so-and-so on digital literacy, those are under user submitted. And some of those we might actually add. So maybe we got introduced to a cool video and there's 30 cool videos from this one website. Once we add those, it'll probably be a listing as its own individual source within here. But so if I want to see, say, the things from Crash Course within the full library, I can do that. And these are the videos from Crash Course. I can click on them. And here's the launch activity. Now, I happen to know that Crash Course has YouTube versions of the videos as well. So one of the things that we're working to do is add all of the different versions of resources. So I happen to know GCF Learn Free. This is actually feedback we got from the first Makerspace. So GCF Learn Free has YouTube versions of the videos. So if it has a YouTube version, it's right here. And here you can watch it right in the library. Or you could go to actually launch it in GCF Learn Free. Now, the feedback we got from teachers was they just want to share the video, that all this text would be overwhelming for their learners. So any of these linked resources are in here. You probably learned about all of the great foreign language resources that were curated and continue to be curated. When we get to the point, which hopefully will be soon, if this article or the derivative of it is also available in Spanish, you'll be able to go to the English and see, here's the English version and here's the Spanish version, which is something that these sites don't do. They're separate websites. GCF and Digital Learn have a Spanish version and an English version, but you don't know that this video is the same as this video, just one's in English and one's in Spanish. So we will be linking that as well. You see all of the skills that this particular activity aligns to. You can sort by format, you can sort by keyword. So say I want to find everything related to spam. Then these are all the resources that have been tagged in the library related to spam. And then I can hop into any of these domains. And so communication, and you will see there's some great Spanish language resources right there. And you can filter by the format, you can filter by the language. As you can see, I don't know if Hungarian is, there's only one resource in Hungarian, but find all the things related to communication that are in Spanish or other languages, and again, by the source. If you know the framework, you can actually do this. So we're going to provide some guidance to folks to understand how to search by skill. But basically, if you know the code of the skill, you can enter that in and you're going to see all of the things that are tagged to CO1, which is communicate effectively. So that's really it in a nutshell. It's just it's a database, but it's a database with almost 2,000 resources that the awesome people in these two projects have worked together to curate. And as noted, it is a living, breathing thing. So with that, I don't know. I'm just excited to like finally have this out.
Yes.
Anyone? So what I'm going to say is I am going to share the link. But what I will say is do not bookmark this link, because this link is going to go away. It's going to be digitalskillslibrary.org. Now, if I type in digitalskillslibrary.org right now, this isn't ideal. I was hoping to have this done. So when you go there now, it's just going to redirect and change to this. But when you go there soon, it will be the URL digitalskills.org.
Awesome. Yay. I'm just like, I'm so happy. I'm just looking at it. I saw those Spanish resources popping up. Everybody, how soon is soon, Jane is saying regarding the URL.
Jane, stop. Honestly, the issue is like, it won't take our credit card. And so we're like trying to process that so we can get the custom URL, and this company is in Australia. And so we will get there. It should be next week, Jane. How about that? So sorry. It was, again, no one turns down money, but evidently they do. There's something with their processing system. And Allison made a comment. So yeah, one of the things that this is part of our movement with Product Learning and with all of the different projects that have funded this work is all of the resources that have been curated here are also going to be in skill blocks. So coming this summer, if you're familiar with skill blocks, that's a tool that allows you to actually create playlists for your learners. So it's going to pull from the library, but basically you can say, hey, this is a skill I want my learners to, or this learner needs, and I can pull the resources that I want and then give them a playlist that's tailored to the specific skill or skills that they need to work on. And so we're just trying to aggregate this stuff, because as even the makers learned in this process, there's some really good sites that actually aggregate. They have like hard links that like, these are 5 things that you could learn on this, but then it's just, it's there, it's static. And so pulling these together in a database allows us to make it more living, breathing, and available for people to constantly see new resources and be made aware of some of the great things that are out there to teach the skills that are going to continue to evolve, like how to set up a payment processing thing on your website.
Awesome. And I just want to add to, someone asked further up about resources that they added. So to any of our EdTech Makerspace participants who are here today, please know that I'm doing my best to get everything copied over and into here. But I haven't finished.
Right.
Awesome. Well, I was hoping what we could do now, everybody responded to that poll at the beginning regarding what which of those domains is an obstacle for you in terms of developing digital resilience, whether it's for you personally or with learners. And so what I wanted to do was go ahead and send us all into breakout rooms to look at the library and see if we can find resources to address that obstacle. Okay, so the idea here is you're going to go into a random group, not based on the domain, and together talk about a scenario that you ran into an obstacle, and have a chance to go into the library and see if through the searching and looking at different domains, you can find a learning resource that would have been helpful in that situation. Okay, any questions about that activity, please? If you need to go at the top of the hour, that's fine, no hard feelings, but we would love to see more reactions and feedback of the updated library.